colorful World's Fair attractions is a dream home for tomorrow's living today. You'd have to touch the siding to be convinced it's laminated plastic, the key to this house which needs almost no maintenance. The first visitors tour the ranch house, where an invisible family enjoys carefree living. In the boys' room, bunk beds are a space-saving feature. The unique model train is the stuff youthful dreams are made of. A room to delight any girl. Even her dress dances. And everywhere, the walls, doors, and furniture surfaces spotlight the exciting new Formica materials and specially designed fabrics. The wall paneling in the somewhat formal living room is forever fresh. And here, too, the Native American furniture shows the flexibility of laminates. The oohs and ahs come often with the dream all-electric kitchen. Every surface can be wiped clean in seconds. The textured patterns are as fresh as spring, and everything's newly designed to make cooking and serving so quick and free. The charcoal grill conveniently backs the fireplace of the family room, which is another stop on the tour. Informal comfort and easy care here. All across the country, replicas of the World's Fair house are being built for public viewing.
Following the introduction of modifications which had been indicated by the results of full-scale tunnel testing of the Avrocar at NASA Ames Research Center, a continuation test program was begun. The objective of this program was to prove the effectiveness of the new control system from hovering through transition in the presence of the ground up to free flight conditions. The program consisted in the main of further wind tunnel tests at Ames Research Center to prove the effects of these modifications, with a short flight test program at Avro to establish that the hovering capability had not deteriorated. A brief terrain test program was later added. The modifications provided for aft deployment of the peripheral jet sheet from the wing tip for transition and forward flight. Both vehicles were modified, one for further static and flight testing at the Avro facility, and the other for tests in the 40 by 80 foot tunnel at Ames Research Center. The changes were confined mostly to the wingtip, which was modified to divert the annular jet aft for increased forward thrust and improved aerodynamic and control characteristics. Transition doors, which extend around the sides and rear of the vehicle, act as flow splitters to divert the flow gradually from the annular hovering nozzle to the new wingtip nozzle for transition to forward flight. With the transition doors in the forward flight position, wingtip cascades at each side of the vehicle direct the jet flow aft. Pitch and roll control in forward flight is provided by the addition of 6 control vanes which operate in conjunction with the existing focusing control ring. On completion of the modification program, the vehicle was installed in the static test rig for functional checking of the new control system and to determine as far as possible that the vehicle performance in the ground cushion had not deteriorated as a result of the modifications. Lift, propulsive thrust, and rolling and pitching moments were measured during the 4-hour static test program. For rig testing, the control system was actuated by an external hydraulic system to be sure of maximum control movement. Tufting was used to provide a visual indication of control vane operation and jet flow. On completion of rig testing, the hovering behavior of the aircraft was checked in the tethers before commencing free flight. It should be understood that the original objective of the flight testing in this program was simply to determine that installation of the modifications had not resulted in deterioration of the vehicle performance achieved during previous tests. Early flights revealed that some deterioration in stability and control had in fact resulted from introduction of the modifications, and a number of flights were required to restore the vehicle performance in this respect. During this 6-hour flight test program, various minor experimental modifications were therefore made to the hovering control system and to the central jet configuration. The forward speed of the Avrocar, with the transition doors closed, was found to equal the speed previously achieved. Operation of the transition doors was attempted, but it was determined that the pneumatic boost available for the control system was not sufficient to overcome the large asymmetric load on the focusing control ring. A more powerful control actuation system is planned for future development. In its current configuration, the Avrocar was operating successfully in the ground cushion at a height of 3 feet and speeds up to 30 knots. Preliminary results from the new series of tests at Ames Research Center were also satisfactory. It was now desirable to extend the Avrocar's operation, and the program was extended to include flights over various types of unprepared terrain and natural obstacles. Initial tests over gravel and small surface irregularities presented no problems. We were now confident of the vehicle's ability to negotiate appreciable obstacles, and a rugged course, partially gravel and partially grass, with a 3-foot deep ditch, was selected for the next flights. Again, the Avrocar covered the course successfully, becoming, as far as we know, the first ground effect machine to negotiate obstacles of this nature. The vehicle had now clearly demonstrated its ability to operate over unprepared terrain, and landing pads were installed in place of the wheels for the following phase of testing, which included operation over soft ground. A number of flights were made over this course, which had a rough, eroded grass surface and a short 1 in 8 gradient. During most of these early tests, ingestion of low-density material presented some difficulty. The fuel control unit filters became blocked with small particles, causing the engines to be starved and resulting in flights of short duration. The problem was caused largely by dead grass and weeds. In an attempt to reduce the ingestion problem, screens were fitted to the engine inlets. No great improvement was achieved as the coarser material tended to block the inlets while fine particles still reached the fuel control filters. Introduction of additional filters resulted in some improvement, and it is anticipated that this handicap will be overcome with little difficulty during further development. In preparation for the final contractual demonstration, a representative course was selected where the vehicle could demonstrate its capability while remaining in view of the observers. The course was laid out to cover concrete, grass, and gravel surfaces and included 4 ditches. Precise directional maneuvers were necessary to avoid surface obstacles. Check flights over this course were performed as the next part of the terrain test program. Erosion due to jet impingement was not found to present a serious problem, and after numerous flights over the same course, only temporary grass browning occurred. In previous flights, the Avrocar had always flown directly over ditches encountered in the course. In order to prove that the ground cushion was not destroyed by sustained flight over depressions along which the jet may tend to travel, it was decided to hover the vehicle over the ditch and then fly out. Before the actual flight demonstration, the Avrocar was flown by a pilot from the United States Air Force Flight Test Center. Familiarization flights were first made over the concrete apron. Additional flights were then made over the demonstration course previously negotiated by Avro's test pilot. Despite unfavorable weather on the day of the flight demonstration, the Avrocar again displayed its ability to operate over terrain which had hitherto been beyond the capability of ground effect machines. In summary, the flight test program at Malton, concluding with this flight demonstration, was carried out concurrently with an extensive 54-hour test program on the second vehicle at Ames Research Center. The tunnel tests showed that if the known thrust losses were to be reclaimed, then the originally estimated performance was realistic. Also, that with the new transition control, transition from the ground cushion to in-flight was feasible. Throughout the entire Avrocar development program, vehicle performance has been compromised due to thrust deficiencies, and it is apparent that if height and speed are to be increased, an increase in thrust is essential. Studies already carried out indicate that a considerable thrust increase could be achieved by reducing turbine tip clearances and by redesign of the ducts, particularly in the region of the final nozzle. With a suitable thrust improvement program, it is believed that a static thrust in the order of the original estimate can be obtained, thus enabling the Avrocar to achieve vertical takeoff and free air transition to forward flight.
Phil, this is quite a machine you have here. I suppose you've come as close as anyone to operating a flying carpet. How does it feel?
Well, it feels fine, and the nice thing about it, it's very easy to fly.
What do you think, Phil, is the truly revolutionary characteristic of this machine?
Well, I mentioned earlier, it was so easy to fly, we do it by shifting our weight is the way we control the aircraft.
I see. By that you mean you don't have any mechanical controls as we normally think of them in an airplane, such as a stick and a rudder?
No, we have the throttle, which all aircraft have, but we control it by shifting our weight, using our feet, etc. That's about all I have.
I see. And how long have you been flying this machine, Phil?
Oh, I have about 3.5 hours on it at the present time.
I see. And I understand that the machine uses the principle of a ducted fan. What do you think of that principle, and do you think it has future possibilities?
Well, as you can see, we're having pretty good success with it right now, and we think it can be utilized for larger aircraft also.
I saw my future in a rainbow. It seemed to shine from where you are. 'Twas in a dream I saw the rainbow that's left me wishing on a star. My future seemed so dark and dreary, and what I saw I now will tell. It seemed for me the world had ended. You waved from this rainbow farewell.
You're watching Sleepcore. Pleasant dreams.
It's not some science fantasy effect from 2001. This electronic display, emanating from Australia's largest computer, is a picture of the condition, past, present and future of planet Earth. The program was originally devised by a scientist working from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, J. Forrester. It was developed under the auspices of the Club of Rome by an MIT research team to present a complex model of the world and what we humans are doing to it. The program, called World 1, doesn't pretend to be a precise forecast. What it does for the first time in man's history on the planet is to look at the world as one system. It shows that Earth cannot sustain present population and industrial growth for much more than a few decades. It shows that simply cleaning up our car exhausts and making some small effort to limit our families simply isn't enough. It's like an electronic guided tour of our global behaviour since 1900 and where that behaviour will lead us. Well, this is the printed version of what we've just seen on the television screen. And what looks at first to be just a maze of computer characteristics is really a system of very simple graphs which project what's going to happen to the planet over the next 150 years if we don't do something drastic to stop it. Down the left-hand side of the graph is the date, 1900, 1940, 1980, 2020, right down to 2060. Now, each of these lines of letters represents a curve showing some aspect of the condition of the planet. The further out this way they go, the greater that figure is. The further this way, the less. For example, P represents population. So here it is at 1900, and then it comes up to 1940, it starts to take off. Here we are at 1980, up to the turn of the century, and then it starts to peter off. Let's now have a look at this next curve, the Q curve, which is the quality of life. And this is represented by, for example, the amount of space people have, the amount of money they have to spend, the amount of food they have to eat. Now, it increases rapidly up to 1940, but from 1940 on, the quality of life diminishes. And here we are about the turn of the century, and we come up to the year 2020, and it's really come right back. More people, of course, means that you start to chew up your supply of natural resources. And this is this curve here, the N curve. And it shows that slowly but steadily, the pool of natural wealth in the world, natural resources, minerals, oil, and so on, is slowly but steadily diminishing. So this is the situation. As population increases, the quality of life decreases, and the supply of natural resources decreases. But have a look at this curve here. This is called the Z curve, and it represents pollution. Now, predictably enough, as the population increases up to 1980, pollution increases. There's more rubbish. But from 1980 to the year 2020, pollution really takes off. This is assuming, of course, that we don't do anything about it. So the year 2020, the condition of the planet starts to become highly critical. And if we don't do anything about it, this is what's going to happen. The quality of life is going to go right back to practically zero. Pollution is going to become so serious, right out here, that it will start to kill people. So the population will diminish. Right back here, less than it was in the year 1900. And at this stage, around about the year 2040, 2050, civilized life as we know it on this planet will cease to exist. Well, hopefully, of course, it won't be allowed to happen. But it's taken this kind of shock treatment to nudge governments into doing something, and slowly we are. We're starting to clean up our atmosphere. We're starting to recycle our rubbish. We're doing something positive about population control. But so far, our efforts have really been just a drop in the ocean. The Club of Rome comprises some 70 men of widely varying backgrounds, but their common concern is that the world problems cannot be solved by individual nations. I spoke with Professor Hugo Tiemann, director of the Battelle Institute, Geneva, Dr. Aurelio Pache, founder of the club, and Dr. Alexander King, director of the World Bank and the United Nations OECD. Dr. King, now you're describing the world as a closed system where all these things are interrelated, and yet the government, the control of the system is by individual nation states. Now, how do you convince them to cooperate?
The sovereignty of these nations is no longer as absolute as it was. There's a gradual diminishing, whittling away of sovereignty, little bit by little bit. Especially, of course, in the smaller countries where it's more obvious. But the bigger countries have to do a good deal of this. by agreeing to international arrangements for the law of the seas, or for the limits of fishing, or for control of the wavelengths in radio, and 101 other things. But especially in the technological field, I think this is going to be increasingly so because of developments next year. I was at an important meeting in Washington a couple of weeks ago, and Peterson, the former Secretary of Commerce, was saying the same thing from an economic point of view, that the general world economic situation, the interdependence of countries on their food and fuels and so on, is leading to an interdependence which has seeds of draining away of sovereignty within it. So I don't think one can envisage an idealistic of jumping to a world federalism or anything of that sort. But the building up probably in the next decade in a number of particularly sensitive fields like energy, raw materials, the use of the oceans, space and so on, of a number of what people are tending to call regimes, which will not be ordinary United Nations type of organizations, but semi-management organizations. There'll be a great deal of consent in them.
Dr. Bachet views the European Common Market as an elementary example of the kind of regional cooperative which is going to be necessary. What responsibilities does he see for Australia?
Australia, you are in a splendid position.
What should we do?
You have food, energy, space. You are distant from other centers, so you can, for a longer time, feel rather more independent than interdependent. But things of the world are going so fast that I think that an enlightened leadership in Australia should see down the road that Australia will have to lose some of its on self-decisions in order to acquire something else which may be purely political in very wide sense, or maybe also security.
The Club of Rome is reluctant to point the finger at any one nation. Yet clearly nations like the United States, which consumes approximately 60% of the world's resources, will in the Club's view have to accept a severe cutback in its voracious appetite. But the Club's utterances are cloaked in a velvet democracy, in the hope that their facts will gently persuade.
We will ask who is making the decision, and whether the decision makers of today, whether they perceive the problems, what kind of problems, and the interactions of the problems. That's a very pragmatic approach.
Has the time come, Dr. King, when we're going to have to say we can no longer entrust our resources and the exploitation of those resources to private enterprise? Has the time come when governments will simply have to take more control?
Simple nationalization and things like that wouldn't help at all, because we've got to keep an incentive approach. And many of the good aspects of private enterprise are very necessary here, but not in the old exploitative way where the market forces dominated the whole situation.
Dr. Pichai, can you tell me what my lifestyle will be in 100 years' time? What sort of car I'll drive, what sort of house I'll live in, what sort of food I'll be eating?
Probably you will have a smaller car. You will use more common transport means. You will work far less hours. You will have a wider cultural possibilities that today. You will not be so much pressed by immediate needs, because through technology, organization of the markets, the basic needs will be taken care of. And I think that you will love nature and continue then what I think you are doing now to protect our environment, to avoid this man-made world where the creatures of nature, the animals, the plants, the green spaces, the wildernesses are bound to disappear.
To the Club of Rome, the status symbols of the year 2000 will be the inverse of today's. Prestige will stem from low consumption. That personal consumption will have to be less is plain enough, but for that privation to be seen as prestigious, would seem to indicate some radical rethinking, at least for the fat cats of the planet.
The dawn of the computer age. It's hard to believe, but this was the state of the art in computers just a few decades ago.
Then we're at fled to electro.
In 1952, the public's perception of a computer was likely to look something like this refugee from a recycling plant. But in reality, the early computer was bulky, slow, and full of vacuum tubes that had a habit of burning out at the wrong time. However, scientists knew the potential of these computers would soon be realized. So with continued modifications over the past 30 years, scientists have been able to reduce the size of a computer, which once filled a 20 by 30 room, into a pocket computer, which now fits into the palm of my hand. As they become cheaper, computers are becoming more and more common. You see them when you bank, shop, fill up for gasoline, and of course the big impact is on games. The most common contact most of us have with computers nowadays are with video games like Space Invaders. And even though it's an exciting game, there are more sophisticated home computers, which are not only recreational, but also educational.
I-N-E. You are correct. Next spell, gasoline.
Computers can take the form of this child's spelling toy to entire departments at colleges and universities devoted to computer science.
The students now have the opportunity on working on one of 17 video display terminals, one of 3 printing terminals, and they also have the opportunity to use 2 remote batch terminal systems.
At San Diego City College, for example, courses in computer programming are attracting more and more students.
Well, I think we're at the frontier of the art in computing here at City College. Our machines can work either as computers by themselves. These are intelligent, programmable computers that can do almost anything that you would need in a small company environment.
Add on any program with the words Pro, P-R-O, and I ask it to print it, and it'll print out all of the programs that begin with P-R-O, and therefore we can check. The P-R-O is for procedures, and we can check the procedures to see that we're using the right ones. It's a very interesting field. There's a lot of different, it's always changing and it's always something new, and it gives me a chance to keep on learning.
It's very useful in the future. Seem like they use computer in everything.
In part 2 of our special series, we'll show you how computers are having a major influence on the business world and even at home. Jesse Macias, News 8, San Diego City College Computer Lab. When you look at computers, you're looking at a billion-dollar industry. And the reason for this computer explosion is this tiny integrated circuit, which now has the capacity to store thousands upon thousands of pieces of information.
The latest model computers are quoted in billions of a second or trillions of a second.
And the need for big businesses to have more sophisticated computers, which can handle abstract problems, is being met by the Timeshare Corporation of San Diego.
We're on the leading edge of technology, and we provide services that are way beyond payroll. Like I use the term decision support. It's actually a navigational tool to guide a manager through the day-to-day business and help him make decisions in a better manner. It's a more refined form of decision making.
And even computers for home use are in big demand.
A lot of the same things apply, like you may have someone in the home that wants to figure out taxes or do budgeting or so forth in the home, just like they'd be doing it in the business. So a lot of the same programs can apply.
The systems to figure out our taxes, balance our checkbooks, and generally run our economic lives in computer language are called programs. The secret to storing these programs rests in this plain-looking piece of plastic called a diskette. According to the home computer companies, all you have to do is insert the disk into this box, and all your financial problems will be greatly simplified. But first, you have to learn to use the computer, which is no simple task. The store we visited has a classroom in the back with a large screen TV announcing instructions to these two intense-looking women. All this for the privilege of paying about $2,000 for a computer system the manufacturer claims will soon revolutionize American life.
One of the interesting features of this Apple computer is that you can program it for a variety of educational exercises. This one has United States history. It's programmed for about 50 questions, and let's see how we do. True or false? Contrary to popular belief, Davy Crockett was not at the Alamo when it fell to the Mexicans in 1836. Well, he was there, so that's false. Punch that in, and it says that is correct.
With so many computers doing so much, are we becoming a society totally dependent on computers?
No, I don't feel so. Society today is so complex and there's so much information, even on an international scale, that's floating around. We need to learn to utilize computers more and more in order to process that data and refine our decisions in our day-to-day life.
The thing about computers is that I think there's some sort of a stigma is the idea of a large central computer, which is sort of like Big Brother, and the computer knows everything about you, and the government can at any time step in and take control over some portion of your life because there's this lack of privacy. And I think with the small computers that are individually owned, that's not really a thing to worry about.
In part 3 of our special series, we'll show you how computers are actually saving lives. This is what a patient sees in an intensive care unit at any major hospital. The treatment of each patient may require any of hundreds of medical facts which are needed instantaneously. In this life or death situation, medical experts would be hard-pressed to look up each patient's written record in an emergency.
In the past, we had to calculate the dosage of these drugs by hand. Computer now allows us to do that in a very quick fashion.
At the University Hospital Burn Unit, medical technicians can quickly establish exactly what the patient's needs are.
We want 5 micrograms per kilo. It'll tell us that we have to give them 18 cc's per hour, and it shows us here whether we're still in the beta range.
Even blood counts, which used to take up valuable lab hours, are now done in seconds thanks to medical computers.
It tells the white count, the red count, the hemoglobin, hematocrit, MCV, MCH, MCHG, and the platelet count.
Blow it all out. And now, to minimize surgical risks, patients are given a test which is simple to administer, but effective in revealing any hidden respiratory diseases.
I can't look at the flow or the pressure curves as they come off the instruments and tell anything about them. I have to have computing to make those signals mean anything, or else sit down with a pencil and paper and do it, which is not very efficient in this day and age.
There's a tremendous amount of information that's generated in a hospital such as this, and it's very difficult to keep it all straight. And computers have had a tremendous impact in terms of ordering and collating all the information that's generated here.
And probably the most dramatic evidence of how computers are saving lives is in the nuclear science lab. What you're seeing is a computer picture of a human heart at work. This man is suspected of having a serious heart disease. In the past, he would have had to undergo a traumatic surgical procedure to determine the extent of his heart problem. Today, computers are taking those risks away.
Now, the computer will convert the information that we are acquiring with the scintillation camera to pictures which we can look at and assess whether the patient is responding normally to the exercise stress, or as we'll look at a patient who responds abnormally to stress, indicating a high likelihood of coronary artery disease.
And this is all possible then with the computers?
The computer is the key to the whole technique.
Now, the heart is beating 3 times faster in this image as compared with the image on the left, but the computer has actually changed the heart rate so that we see the heart as if it were beating together. Now, this is what we expect to see in the normal patient without heart disease. This is a 39-year-old basketball coach who found it very difficult to run down the basketball court and keep up with his players. His heart function deteriorates. It is not beating at the same time as his heart is beating at rest, and it is not beating as vigorously, characteristic of underlying coronary artery disease.
Even with all this progress, medical experts concede they still face a vast ocean of unsolved medical problems which will continue to challenge man and machine. But the road to discovery, at least, has been opened. Jesse Macias, News 8, University Hospital.
is a brilliant idea. Rings of fiber optics, circles of light that we've placed around business and government centers in the Bell Atlantic region to handle your needs for information transport and advanced communications. But the real genius behind what we do lies in our ability to manage these technologies for your affordable, reliable use. The companies of Bell Atlantic, we make technology work for you.
I think that the transistor is has the largest impact of recent inventions, and of course that goes back to 1948. It makes apparatus much more cheap and much more reliable, especially in switching.
What do you see as any current technology that we might look back another 100 years from now and point to in this regard?
I think that optical fibers are the most important thing that we will look back on. Sand is cheaper than copper, and optical fibers are smaller than wires and broader band. And eventually I expect that they will make broadband circuits, even of television bandwidth, into homes as cheap as telephone wires are now.
Speaking of our homes and everyday uses, what are some of the kind of futuristic applications of the new transmission apparatus?
Most of the applications are rather futuristic because terminals for anything but telephony are much more expensive than the good old telephone set. It's really a remarkable thing. It serves all normal people, at least those who have hands to pick it up. And it's so much cheaper than even an electric typewriter, let alone a computer terminal. I feel that to get into new applications, somebody has to invent or devise a cheap terminal that will do other things, whether it's graphical communication or text, as in a teletypewriter.
It's been said that our technology has sort of outpaced our applications of that technology. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no. We're stuck for technology in many respects. Data communication, communication with computers is stuck because the terminals are too expensive. In fact, you can buy a hand calculator that is cheaper than any terminal you can buy to call a computer, so you have the hand calculator. And in other things too, television, broadband transmission, until we have the optical fiber, will be too expensive to have in the home, as I'm afraid picture phone proved.
Do you think the optical fiber is going to be the sort of savior of many of these applications?
Oh, I think it will be, together with the communication satellite, which isn't quite as revolutionary as the optical fiber. I think we'll have a real revolution in communication, but all you can do is predict that it will come. You can't predict when it will come, because people thought of television long before we had television. People can imagine things, but what they can't predict is when they will be cheap enough to be worthwhile.
And what do you think are the most significant contributions the telephone has made to our society in the last 100 years?
The telephone has worked with other things, the automobile in particular, and the airplane, to allow a sort of life and activity that is dispersed while being highly organized. The Bell system is an example of this. It's really highly organized, but it's dispersed all over the country in its manufacturing, in its development, indeed even in its research as well as in its operations. And there are many other enterprises which are similarly dispersed all over the country and yet are highly organized and highly unified. And indeed, families are dispersed. There are children in universities, but they never need feel out of touch with their parents because they can always pick up the telephone and call home.
Radio station that's hoping the future is in the past.
This broadcast from April 22nd of 52. By that time it was the...
Government tonight.
So, a Chicago radio station is now taking a trip down memory lane, hoping for success in the 80s by turning the clock back to another era. Bob Surratt has more.
Rather you mad fool, you. Toscanini, I Kirby and me.
This is where Lucky Strike Green is still going to war, where Lamont Cranston still knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men, and where Chuck Shaden's lifelong hobby of collecting old radio shows has grown from one shelf of tapes at home to 40,000 programs in his own studio. For the last 13 years, Shaden has taken listeners into his on-the-air time machine. First on small suburban FM stations, and now on a 50,000-watt AM giant. WCFL, asleep in the ratings for the past few years, is hoping Shaden's new 3-hour weeknight broadcasts wake up a few listeners.
Incidentally, did you know that Kinney was the first man to use a ringmaster without a mustache? No, I didn't. Did it work out? I'm afraid not. You see, without the mustache, the ringmaster had no authority at all, and he used to whip the clowns for laughing at him and everything.
His suburban studio is appropriately located in back of a baseball card memorabilia store. But from here, thanks to WCFL's powerful nighttime signal, most of the northeastern United States can now hear Shaden's sounds from the past.
Now let's get back to 1952 and Life with Luigi.
Now let's turn to page 2 of Luigi Basco's letter to his mother in Italy.
Well, Mamma Mia, tonight is a big dance for my association.
Shaden is fulfilling his boyhood dreams of becoming a radio announcer. By the way, that's the same radio Shaden still has in his studio today. This is the other part of Chuck Shaden's nostalgia empire, a store where you can buy a few memories. Here, the old radios are for sale, and so is everything else at Metro Golden Memories, including, of course, the old radio shows Shaden plays. Not only is nostalgia more popular than ever today, but it's more available than ever.
When we first opened our store, for example, you might have been able to find one book about the golden age of radio. Now a half a dozen books exist on it.
Why the increased interest today in yesterday?
They're finding that the values of the past have something to say. And as far as the radio stuff is concerned, there's a whole generation that never really had the opportunity to listen to this kind of audio entertainment.
And for Chuck Shaden, yesterday is where he wants to be tomorrow.
I grew up with radio as a kid, doing my homework, listening to the radio. My folks saying, you'll never go anyplace listening to the radio and doing your homework, but now it turns out that listening to the radio was my homework.
Suspense.
If he stays on the air a few more years, he'll probably start playing some of my old radio shows.